5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thunderbirds are go! Look out! The tower! It's gonna hit the tower!
There's not time to explain. They're evacuating the city as fast as possible.
Brains is going to use his new invention.
Any moment now.
I don't know what he's got in there, but I sure hope it works. Thunderbirds, Brains Gamble. Read by Andrew Clements. Activate takeoff procedure, barked the chief controller to his subordinate. The younger man checked the video set.
Clamps released. Am charging main jets now, sir.
His hands passed over the complex control panel. Beyond the protective walls of the airbase control room, the US Dart rocket plane shuddered in its angular gantry. White-hot flame licked from its exhaust jets. The thick steel of the supporting ramp already glowed red from the intense heat.
Course reading correct, sir. Radar tracker positioned.
Then start the countdown, Lieutenant. The slow countdown from 50 began. With each second, the noise of the rocket jet's engines increased until it reached an ear-splitting crescendo. An exhaust of seething heat completely enveloped the gantry as maximum power was reached. Nearby, the radar tracker's huge concave dome watched aloof from the top of its supporting structure.
12? 11? 10?
The lieutenant's voice droned across the control room, accompanied by flashing lights and clicking switches. Perspiration moistened the chief controller's furrowed brows.
It must be a perfect takeoff,
he reflected anxiously.
There's no room for errors. The nuclear power pack contained in the Dart's fuselage insists upon that.
For at a prefixed time, the remote-controlled rocket plane would discharge its deadly load on a pinpointed position in the mid-Atlantic. Scientists had developed the non-contaminating nuclear bomb for just such a task. Its target? To destroy a submarine mountain range, a dangerous hazard to international shipping lanes. But even as the last few moments of the countdown burned away, the supporting gantry heaved ominously. Encased within a vortex of fiery heat, the steel structure was unable to withstand the strain. In the control room, the video scanner revealed the disaster. The chief controller gasped in startled horror, while instantaneously the countdown ended.
2, 1, 0!
It was too late. The screaming rocket plane hurtled up the ramp like a bullet from the barrel of a gun. But the tortured steel could bear the weight no longer. There was the final sound of wrenching metal, and the entire gantry buckled under. Robbed of its guidance, the rocket plane lurched dangerously off course, straight towards the radar tower.
Look out! The tower! It's gonna hit the tower!
Yelled the chief controller hoarsely, tension rising in his throat. But the lieutenant was not watching. He stabbed swiftly at a panel switch.
There's just a chance. I'm firing number 2 jet now, sir. It might just swing its course.
A thunderous roar charged the air, and a second sheet of flame ripped from the Dart's rear. Its nose angled dramatically, but still too late to clear the craning tower. The projecting port fin seared into the dome's edge. Splintered metal flew viciously, and the tracking tower collapsed. Within seconds, there was only a minute flickering light in the clear southwestern sky to indicate the rocket plane's course. But that was enough. Inside the control room, the horrified lieutenant spun from the videoscope. His face was gaunt and suddenly paled.
Sir, the dart! It's out of control and flying straight towards Washington. At its present speed, it will reach there in exactly 2 hours.
The controller caught his breath.
Just as the nuclear power pack will be dropped. And there's nothing we can do to stop it.
The hot Pacific sun beat down on Tracy Island, secret home of international rescue. Unaware of the impending disaster, Jeff Tracy sat lazily tapping his fingers on the smooth desk surface. He listened patiently to the bespectacled figure before him. Brains, scientific genius of the organization, hesitantly finished explaining.
So you see, Mr. Tracy, I've managed to install my latest invention into one of the pods carried by Thunderbird 2.
Sounds just great, Brains. In theory. But in practice, it's a white elephant. Where do you suppose we'd ever need to use it?
But Brains did not get a chance to answer. The door swung open, and Scott and Virgil Tracy walked in.
Hello, Father. What's this? Brains been wasting money on another of his crackpot ideas again?
He smiled jokingly. Virgil patted the disheartened Brains on the back.
Don't worry about those two, Brains. I'll buy it.
Jeff was about to speak when the eyes of a portrait flashed brightly. It was his son John calling from Thunderbird 5, International Rescue Space Station. Jeff turned on his desk microphone and looked at the video image, which now replaced the picture.
Hello, John. What's the trouble?
Briefly, John explained the radio SOS he had received from the Southwest Air Base.
Okay, John. Inform them we'll do all we can. Oh, and you'd better get a direct line to the White House. Give them the lowdown on what's going on.
John closed contact.
FAB, Father.
Jeff hurriedly called in his other sons, Gordon and Alan.
So that's the situation. We've got just about 90 minutes before the nuclear pack drops on Washington.
Well, that's some deadline, Father. Do you think it's a job for Thunderbird 3?
Alan, youngest of Jeff's 5 sons, pointed out.
We'd better ask Brains on that one, Alan.
Brains' eyes flickered decisively behind his thick-rimmed glasses.
It's sure a sticky one, Mr. Tracy, but I reckon we can do it.
Then, turning to Scott,
I suggest you get after the rocket plane in Thunderbird 1, Scott. Keep a close track on it till I get there.
What?
Scott shouted in surprise.
I thought your job was here, Brains.
It is normally, Scott, but there's not time to explain. I'll be traveling in Thunderbird 2 with Virgil.
Within minutes, the island swimming pool slid back to release Thunderbird 1. Scott turned on the intercom.
I don't know what Brains has got up his sleeve, Father, but he can rely on me to locate the flying bomb for him.
With its nose bent skywards, Thunderbird 1 picked up speed, leaving the ever-diminishing Tracy Island far behind. Meanwhile, Jeff looked anxiously towards Brains.
I sure hope you know what you're up to, Brains.
Don't worry, Mr. Tracy. I'll tell you about it when I get back. Besides, the trip will make a break.
A sharp call from Gordon Tracy made Jeff turn.
It's John on the air again, Father.
Brains and Virgil hurried out. Jeff reached for his desk microphone.
I've been on to Washington, Father. They're evacuating the city as fast as possible, but there's not enough time to get everyone out. Already the highways are jammed with a solid line of outgoing traffic, and the underground shelters are filling up fast. I just hope we're in time. Thunderbird 1 is already airborne, John. Brains reckons he can stop the bomb all right, but let me know of any further developments. Sure thing, Father. FAB.
Travelling at some 15,000 miles an hour, Scott suddenly picked up the dart on the TV scanner.
I've caught sight of it, Father. I'm closing in.
Scott outlined the dart's bearing to Brains and Virgil in Thunderbird 2, which was now heading to intercept. Loaded in the carrier pod was Brains' latest invention.
Thanks for the position, Scott. Just hold on till we get there.
Brains replied over the intercom. But Scott was working on an idea of his own. Thrusting Thunderbird 1 to full throttle, he edged towards the speeding rocket plane, closer and closer until he could even read the code number on the gleaming fuselage. Can't afford to make a slip, he thought to himself grimly as he neared to within a few yards. With tense hands, Scott gripped the throttle stick. He eased Thunderbird 1 adjacent to the speeding dart. The gap closed, there was the screech of scraping metal, and Thunderbird 1's nose cone struck against the rocket plane. In a flash, it was all over. The dart shot away on a new course, and Scott exhaled loudly. Phew! Done it! Now it's up to Brains. He called Thunderbird 2. Scott to Virgil. I diverted the dart's flight path. Washington's safe. Now let's see if Brains can stop the nuclear pack from dropping.
He's already entered the pod, Scott. I don't know what he's got in there, but I sure hope it works.
Virgil's voice drifted back. Scott continued to trail the rocket plane. He looked at his watch. Time was running out, and fast. But already Thunderbird 2 had closed up. At its controls, Virgil frowned. There's only 5 minutes before the nuclear power pack will drop. Say, Brains, you'd better make it snappy. There was no reply. Brains? What are you up to? Are you okay? But again there was only silence. Next moment, Scott's voice broke in.
Hey, Virgil! What the heck's going on? There are 3 minutes left. What does Brains think he's up to?
I don't know, Scott. Something must be wrong. Brains is in the pod, but there's no answer.
As the final minutes died, back at Tracy Island, Jeff looked at his watch nervously.
It's almost time. What's happening?
It was Alan who answered.
Father, it's Scott. He's redirected the dart away from Washington, but the bomb's still aboard. Brains is in Thunderbird 2's pod, but Virgil can't contact him.
Suddenly, Jeff's eyebrows raised.
It's the gadget. Of course. Brains is going to use his new invention. Call up Virgil, Alan. Tell him to keep a close tail on the rocket plane. There's no time to explain.
Virgil received the message and kept his hand tight on the controls. It was with a strained voice that Scott called him over the intercom.
30 seconds to go, Virgil. This is it. Brains must have mistimed. Nothing's happened.
But before Virgil could answer, he noticed a change in the dart's undercarriage. It was the bomb hatch sliding open. Scott, look! The dart! The bomb is going to drop! But unknown to Virgil, at the same time a hatch had opened in the side of the pod carried by Thunderbird 2. Inside, Brains stared intensely into the telescopic sight. His finger twitched, hovering on the firing button.
Any moment now,
he muttered to himself. Suddenly, the glint of shining steel caught his eye, and the nuclear power pack discharged. Brains' index finger pushed down hard. There was a brief, high-pitched roar, and his senses momentarily reeled. A huge, looped mesh, powered by small direction jets, shot forward from its ramp inside the pod. Brains watched anxiously as it raced towards its target. Next moment, there was a dull click, and the great steel net closed. Brains sighed with relief.
Phew! Spot on. That took some concentration.
Safely gripped within the ultra-strong mesh, the bomb would now be carried safely down to Earth by the supporting retrojets. Already below, the ground authorities moved in for the recovery. Brains wiped his perspiring hands and spoke into the mouthpiece.
Hello, Scott? Virgil? I think it's about time we were getting back now. I've, got a lot of work to do.
For a moment, the radio buzzed wildly with excited voices. Then Scott checked in.
Great shooting, Brains. I'll clean things up, then follow you back.
Seconds later, there was a blinding flash, and the dart exploded in a ball of fire. Scott turned Thunderbird 1 away. The destructor cannon had done its task. It was several hours later that the Tracy family were relaxing in the comfort of their luxurious lounge. The door opened and Brains entered. He looked preoccupied as he closed it behind him.
Oh, Mr. Tracy, just thought you might like to hear about my latest project.
Brains flushed at the warm laughter which rang across the room. Jeff looked up cheerfully.
You can take it as cleared, Brains. If it's half as useful as your last one, then we'll be needing it.